Hi, this is Marin Hill with Montgomery Planning. I just wanted to let everyone know that we're going to ask you to mute yourselves throughout the meeting. So if I hear a little background noise and I see that you're unmuted, I might just mute you, and then you can unmute later in the meeting. And we'll have some instructions up front, but I just wanted to let people know. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chuck Kynes, and I want to welcome you all to the Thrive Montgomery 2050 Community Chat for Parks. I'm going to get started here in a few minutes, let a few more people join us, and then we'll get started. All right, folks, we're going to get started now. Again, my name is Chuck Kynes. I'm a park planner with Montgomery County Department of Parks, part of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. With me participating in the Parks Chat is Rachel Newhouse, also a park planner, and Hujong Garland, who's the park planning supervisor. We also have a number of other park staff joining us on this call who will be available to answer questions for their different subject matter areas. So I think we're pretty well covered. We also have planning staff on the call as well to help us with any technical issues that might come up. I just want to start by talking about what is the community chat and what are we trying to achieve today? We really want this to be an informal conversation. We do have a PowerPoint presentation prepared where we're going to go through some of the goals, policies, and actions that are part of the staff report that's going to the planning board on Thursday. And we're hoping you've had a chance to take a look at that. And if not, we will post it in the chat box for you to take a look at while we're going through our presentation. So again, I'd like to start by saying that this is the first, Parks is the first one to go. This is the first of numerous chats that are planned, and near the end of the presentation, you'll have an opportunity to see the schedule of other community chats that are scheduled throughout the month of June. Just a quick reminder, if you aren't familiar with Teams, how to participate. This meeting is being recorded and it will be shared on our website. Please mute yourself using the microphone button and as part of your connection to Teams. You can mute and unmute yourself. If you have a comment or question, you can raise your hand here. If you want to speak to the entire community that's part of this chat, or you can just type it into the chat and we will read the question when we have time. You can unmute yourself if you are called on, and we will call on you. Before we jump into the subject matter of parks, I just wanted to spend a few minutes to give you an opportunity to talk about how you're feeling right now about things that are happening in our world, in our county, whatever's on your mind, what's concerning you. If you want to raise your hand and get things off your chest, let us know. And I'll leave this up for a minute or two. Rachel Newhouse, has anybody raised their hand?
No, not that I see. I don't see any questions in the meeting chat either. So I think you can start with the full presentation.
And unmute yourself if you need to. My speakers may not be working. I cannot hear you. So that is a problem, but we'll figure it out.
Hey, Chuck,
You'll
this
have
is
to be my ears, Rachel
this is
and Hujong. My speakers are, I'm not hearing anything. So I want to jump into today's presentation. We're going to start by talking about what is Thrive Montgomery 2050. We will provide an overview of the parks draft goals, policies, and actions that are part of the staff report that is posted right now for the presentation to the planning board this coming Thursday. And I'm not going to cover everything that's related to parks. I'm only going to cover a few brief ones. And if there's anything that I haven't covered during the presentation, you'll have an opportunity as part of the question and answer session that follows to answer any questions, ask any questions, and we'll respond. And then we'll talk about conclusion and next steps, including the schedule for the Thrive Montgomery 2050 project. So what is Thrive Montgomery? Thrive Montgomery is an update to the general plan that was last comprehensively updated in 1969. The original Wedges and Corridors plan was approved and adopted in 1964, and then it was updated in 1969, and then it was updated again, not comprehensively, but it was updated a little bit in 1993. And then this is a long-term, long-range vision for the county. It's a really high-level policy document that at the 30,000-foot view that is really focused on how do we accommodate future growth in the county, and how do we make our existing communities better? So the Thrive Montgomery 2050 plan will help guide countywide policies, both in the planning department and in the parks department, but also in other county agencies as well. It will drive future initiatives and programs, both within Park and Planning and also within the county executive branch. It will provide a guidance. It will provide guidance for infrastructure that's needed for future land use planning and community planning. It will identify the types of community amenities, public services that are needed as part of that future growth and development, and also identify gaps based on what's on the ground now, and also focus on how we're going to accommodate future private development, both commercial and residential in the county, and what our expectations are of that development in the future. So the main vision of Thrive Montgomery 2050 is basically can be categorized in two broad themes. We're identifying what's needed to develop complete communities, focusing on the types of housing that's needed, the price points, proximity to transit, the types of workplaces that we want to pursue, the types of needed goods and services, and the public amenities, public services, and of course parks that are needed to achieve complete communities. And then the other big theme in Thrive Montgomery is that we're pursuing vibrant corridors that are transit centered primarily, but we're also looking at corridors of green, our stream valleys, and making sure that we have green infrastructure that's connected to not only to protect habitat, but also to connect to the communities and to the transit corridors. This is a slide that Gwen Wright presented as part of her Ask Anything series over the last couple of weeks. And I wanted to cover it because I really think it encapsulates everything that Thrive Montgomery is trying to achieve going into the future. So we really want to focus on how do we make the county more urban? And urban means more sustainable. We want more compact communities so that people don't have to drive as far to get to the things that they need. And that gets into the 15-minute living. We really want to try to achieve, based on your urban, rural, or suburban context, 15-minute living, whether that means 15 minutes of walking, 15 minutes of biking, 15 minutes of taking transit. How do you get to the services and retail that you need to get to as part of your daily living? We want to promote active and healthy lifestyles. We want to get people outside and doing more walking and biking and other types of physical activity so that they can be more healthy, and really focus on the health disparities in different communities so that everyone has opportunities for leading a more healthy and active life. We're going to pursue, as part of the general plan, connections, social connections, and also physical connections. How do people get to places that they want to get to by walking and biking? That's the physical side, but we're also focused on social connectivity, and so what our chairman calls social capital. So opportunities for people to get together, to gather, and to celebrate their community and stay up to date with their neighbors. And housing is a right and a value. We really want to make sure that we're providing housing for all price points, so that housing is affordable to anybody who currently lives in the county and is renting but wants to own, or housing that is generally more affordable. We want to transform our boulevards into people-centric places. We want to focus less on cars and more on making sure that our boulevards are better for people, for walking, biking, taking transit, those sorts of things. We really want our communities to be more sustainable and resilient. And we want to, like I said, moving over to the next slide, or the next area, we want to stop planning for cars. We have quite a bit of the county that's overdeveloped with a lot of commercial areas that are vacant. We want to redevelop those areas and depave, quote unquote, the county so that the communities are more green and provide more open spaces and trees for the residents. We want to provide a variety of commercial uses. We want to focus on regional solutions to problems, working with our partners both in DC and Northern Virginia, and also the Baltimore area to resolve regional problems more effectively and efficiently. We want to focus on our diversity. Montgomery County is one of the most diverse counties of its size in the nation, and we want to celebrate that as our strength and really focus on making sure that we're developing our communities in a culturally appropriate way. And then, of course, we want to embrace the importance of place, making sure that we're developing places of value that are important to people, also in a culturally appropriate way. So I want to focus a few minutes on this slide. These are the categories of goals that you'll see in the staff report that, like I said, I can't hear, I'm sorry, but I'm hoping has been put in the chat box. There are 8 categories of goals in the general plan in Thrive Montgomery: design, arts, and culture, complete communities, connectedness, diverse economy, safe and efficient travel, affordability and attainability, healthy and sustainable environment, diverse and adaptable growth. And the ones that are in yellow are the ones that really relate to parks a little bit more. Parks are sort of interwoven. Parks has its own chapter, so parks are sort of interwoven throughout the document, but primarily can be found in the areas that are highlighted in yellow. And of course, everything relates to the 3 pillars of Thrive Montgomery 2050, and that is the ones in the center: economic health, environmental resilience, and community equity. I want to spend a few minutes talking about the Department of Parks. Montgomery County has an extensive park system we've been developing since 1927 when the commission was created. We now have 422 parks across over 37,000 acres. And we have, and, I'm not going to go through all this list, but as you can see, we have an extensive developed park system. And we also have an extensive undeveloped park system. About 2/3 of the park system is undeveloped and about 1/3 is developed in the county. So of the 37,000 acres, roughly 25,000 acres are undeveloped or less developed than what you see in the list. They're preserved and protected in their natural state. So why are parks and open spaces important? Our parks and recreation system promotes healthy, active living, opportunities for people to play, to get exercise, to enjoy the outdoors. It also promotes economic health. The 2 reasons that people move to Montgomery County or businesses relocate to Montgomery County are for our park system and for our schools, primarily. Our parks also provide a sense of community and civic pride, places that people can celebrate their community. They also provide opportunities for social gathering and cohesion. They provide opportunities for healthy, safe, and green communities, opportunities to connect with nature, areas of contemplation to get out of the communities and into nature. And of course, they stored our natural and cultural resources. I'm going to stop here just briefly before we get into goals and policies. I'm going to see if I can get my speakers working, and I'm going to hand it over to Rachel and see if there's any questions in the chat box or if people have any of their hands raised, because I can't see that right now.
Yes. So Chuck, can you hear me? Okay, apparently not. How about community? Can you hear me? We've gotten a question from Deborah, and Deborah, you can ask it yourself if you unmute yourself to others, and we'll provide an answer. Okay, Deborah, your For some reason, your microphone is not working well. So if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and post your question and provide an answer. So Deborah's question is, over the past 10 years, or so, has Montgomery County Park acreage increased or decreased? And the answer to that is it has increased. We generally try to acquire land over time to meet the new community needs and to add to some of our existing stream, valley, and regional parks. So as developments come forward, we either get dedication from these developments or we acquire land. So it has increased.
I'll just add really quickly, this is Dominic from the Parks Department. I think we've added about 5,000 acres over the last 10 years.
Hey, this is Dominique. And Chuck's still not here. Is Marin on?
I believe Chuck is still having trouble hearing.
Okay.
I think we can, if Chuck does the presentation, this is Rachel, I can go ahead and answer the questions.
Hi guys, thank you for bearing with us. This is Marin Hill. We're just waiting a second to figure out this audio situation, but we will start up in just a few seconds. I'm sure as we're all experiencing during this time, it can be challenging and there are little hiccups with our technology. So thank you so much for having patience with us.
Lisa, I'm trying to share the presentation from my screen. Is people can see the presentation?
Yes, we can see the presentation.
Rachel, can
Thank
you take
you.
it from here so we can continue?
Okay, yeah, I can take it from here. Can everybody hear me?
I'm
Sure.
back on.
Oh, great.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
That was so frustrating. I'm so sorry for that technical problem. I've never had that problem with Teams before. Very frustrating. So did anybody hear, was I audible at all for the first slides?
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, you were. I was. Okay, good. All right. So I am going to put my presentation back up. Hold on. I had to reboot my computer.
Chuck, you know what? The presentation has already been shared by Hojang, so you can just go ahead and start speaking.
Okay. All right. I want to start with the goals, policies, and actions chapter or slide, Hojang.
Yes, I have a completed community in the screen right now.
Okay. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, there's 8 buckets or 8 goal themes in the general plan, and like I said, there's 6 of the 8 parks is interwoven throughout. I'm going to start with complete communities. I'm not going to highlight everything that's in the staff report, but I am going to highlight a few things that I'm hoping will generate discussion later in the presentation. So first and foremost, what we're trying to do with complete community is promoting active and healthy lifestyles by making parks and open spaces a central element of communities. We really want to make sure that we have parks within 15 minutes of where people live, whether that's by walking, biking, taking transit, or even driving if you live in the rural area. We really want to make sure that people have opportunities to get outside and enjoy the outdoors and enjoy our park system in a way that they can engage in physical activity. Next slide. And what we mean by this slide here talks about, sort of illustrates what we're trying to achieve with the general plan. This is in Bethesda, and of course, we're not going to be able to achieve Bethesda everywhere in the county, but this is a really good example of, on the right, you see an icon of a transit vehicle. That's the metro station, and within 10 or 15-minute walk, you can access Carolyn Freeland Urban Park. You can access Bethesda Library. You can access Bethesda Elementary School, and of course, all the restaurants and shops that are in downtown Bethesda are also within a 10 or 15-minute walk. And again, that's Bethesda. Bethesda is unique, but it really illustrates what we're trying to achieve with the general plan. Next slide. We're also focused on connectedness. We want to create strong neighborhoods and communities that foster social connectedness and physical connectedness, and really create a culture of inclusion of all cultures, all abilities, all types of people in our county. Parks and open spaces are opportunities to facilitate active lifestyles, physical connections with our communities, and establish a culture of inclusion so that people linger and connect socially. Next slide. Healthy and sustainable environment. This chapter talks about not only healthy and sustainable natural resources, but also healthy and sustainable communities, so that how people live is sustainable. So we want to improve the health and well-being of all county residents and address the health disparities that exist between different population groups. We want to create convenient and safe opportunities for people to be physically active based on their age, their culture, their ability or income level. We want to make sure that we're serving all the county residents. And we want to promote an active and healthy lifestyle so that county residents in their respective context, whether they live in an urban area, suburban area, or rural area, that they have access to a park or open space within walking distance or biking distance or driving distance from where they live. Next slide. Design, arts, and culture is really focused on a variety of things, really. Excellent design in the county, making sure that we really have quality design when we develop our communities or redevelop our communities. And we also want to focus on making sure that our communities have opportunities for arts and also reflect the local culture that these facilities serve. So this means creating and preserving great places with attractive streets and public spaces, inspired urban design, and high quality architecture. And we want to make sure that we're using a variety of existing and new parks and trails to support the new communities and also retrofit our existing communities. Next slide. Getting back to complete communities, we really want to make parks and open spaces and plazas we want to orient our communities around those so that we provide opportunities for social gathering and for people to linger and connect socially. We want to locate our parks as places where social gathering is encouraged, where people feel welcome and where they want to spend time in. And we also want to maximize opportunities to co-locate when we redevelop and focus on partnerships with design excellence. Next slide. So what we're showing here is the new Wheaton Library and Rec Center in just north of downtown Wheaton. And what happened here was the Department of Parks and the Department of Rec partnered, swapped land, and the Wheaton new rec center was developed with a library that's inside it, and we also got a new park as part of it. So this was sort of a really good public-public partnership, a co-location where it really worked well, lots of good synergy, so that it not only did this parcel of land provide a needed public service with recs and libraries, but also provided a nice open space and also a nice playground for the community. Next slide. Back to connectedness. The connectedness category of goals is focused on, like I said, not only physical connectedness, but social connectedness. And a big element of the connectedness is making sure that we're addressing racial equity and social justice as part of everything that we do, incorporating it and thinking about it in everything that we do. And we want to employ strategies to assess whether we're doing a good job in terms of racial equity and social justice with how we do our master functional, regulatory, and park planning. Next slide. So you may have seen in the news recently the incident on the Capitol Crescent Trail, and if not, I encourage you to look it up. So there was our parks provide an opportunity for civic engagement and democracy. We really want to encourage people to think about our parks as opportunities for, or as platforms for democracy. And this incident was an example of where, unfortunately, one resident did not perceive it that way, and our park police had to intervene. But we really want to promote our parks as platforms for equity and social justice. Next slide. So back to healthy and sustainable environment. We really want to manage our natural and cultural resources in a way that benefits future generations and also serves our communities and diverse populations. We want to focus on making sure that our natural environment is sustainably managed. That includes parks, but also on our private land. And at the same time, providing opportunities on the public lands for outdoor recreation at the same time. Next slide. In the category of diverse and adaptable growth, a big focus of that goal category is transforming land uses around transit. And for us, Parks Department, a big focus on that is making sure that when we have opportunities to redevelop, or when developers come in and redevelop land around transit-centered places, we want to make sure that we have adequate plazas, parks, and open spaces so that people have an opportunity to use those spaces for healthy, active lifestyles and social gathering. Next slide. So here is an example in Wheaton. We're focused on Wheaton here because a lot of good things are happening in Wheaton. So what's happening here is that the Department of Parks and the Housing Opportunities Commission partnered to redevelop some land north of Wheaton to provide more affordable housing and at the same time develop a new park to serve the community that's near transit. So this again is another good example of a public-public partnership to achieve multiple objectives. Next slide. Back to design, arts, and culture. We really want to make sure that our communities are culturally sensitive and culturally appropriate, so that the parks that are in communities or in different communities provide opportunities to celebrate the art and the culture of the communities that they serve. So the two photos that you see here are park activation events where we invited the community to come in and celebrate their community and their culture. Next slide. And finally, I think this is our last slide before we get to the questions. As part of the design, arts, and culture, we really want to make sure we celebrate the history of the county. Montgomery County has a very rich history, a very culturally diverse, actually, history. So this is an example of Josiah Henson Park in White Flint, North Bethesda, where we really want to celebrate the African-American part of Montgomery County, the life of African-Americans, the early African-Americans in the county. Next slide. So we're now going to jump into a series of questions that we want to engage. We want to invite people who are on this call to either raise their hand or type their questions or comments into the chat function. What do you most like about county parks, and what are we doing well? That's the first series, and we really would like to hear from you. This is really a conversation between us and the people that we serve, so we really want to hear from you. So what do you most like about county parks, and what are we doing well?
So this is Rachel. We got a comment from Kit, and Kit says, good communication with watershed groups. Thank you, Kit. We have a couple more comments. They appreciate the parks keeping the environment in mind with native plantings and conservation in mind. And they enjoy the natural parks areas and the trails. And there's agreement from Tish, communications on COVID have been active and creative. And Michael likes the dog parks.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Oh, move on to the next slide. Sorry, I can't do it. This is an opportunity for you to tell us what you think is missing from county parks and how you think we can improve. This is also, the next question is also going to be, just to foreshadow it, 30 years from now, what do you think the Parks Department should be focusing on?
So we have a comment from somebody who doesn't have a microphone, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. This is Dan from Damascus Sports Association. He says, one of the challenges we have is youth sports field availability to meet rising demands due to population increases. We've had to get creative to get suitable fields within the local area. For example, we've adopted a local church and rehab the field. But this isn't, I'm scrolling down, but this isn't something a nonprofit can sustain. Some highly used fields, Damascus Rec Center, aren't regularly maintained, and parents frequently need to mow and drag ball fields, etc. What are the plans to make sure we maintain and increase up-county field inventory to support population increases, for example, Clarksburg? So I believe we have, is Mark Wallace on the line? Because he's been working very closely with our sports groups to increase field access and field use.
I believe Coach Job was on the call as well.
So here's what I would say about that. There's two things. One is field quality, and one is field quantity. So I'm reading through the chat here, and it talks about Damascus Rec Center. If you have specific fields, Parks is gradually taking over the maintenance of most of the public fields in the county in order to sort of improve the field quality problem out there. And two is if you're having a hard time finding fields, which would be a quantity issue, you should give me a call and see what we can do to find out specifically what you're looking for, what sport, and what age group, to see what we can do for you.
Great, thanks, Mark. Let's move
Okay.
on to the next slide.
We have a couple more comments, Chuck. There's some good comments in here. Here's one about in Silver Spring redevelopment, there was a nearly complete lack of open space in parks as it was redeveloped. The barn door has been closed, but it's a real lost opportunity. And I think we should let Kit know that there's a new sector plan for Silver Spring. And one of our staff persons, Christina Sasaki. Christina, if you want to mention your work on this plan and what we're trying to do there, that'd be great.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So the Silver Spring Master Plan, last week we just approved the boundary of the plan. So this is a great opportunity. We're going to start engaging with the community. We haven't started the process yet. We were just discussing with the community in terms of the boundaries. But this will be a great opportunity to get feedback when we kick off the community outreach in terms of parks and open space. And we did have recommendations on the Energized Public Space Functional Master Plan for Silver Spring. So the plan was approved in 2018. So we incorporate a lot of recommendations that we are now going to be revising and updating with the Silver Spring sector plan. So we will have a great opportunity to now find new tools, new funding to pursue open spaces and parks in the Silver Spring area.
So thanks, Christina. Somebody else said, this is from Busy, I heard a rumor that some parkland in Silver Spring is under consideration for development. Can anyone shed light on this? Has that come up during part of the sector plan discussions for Silver Spring?
We had a lot of different opportunities that we highlight on the Energized Public Space Functional Plan. And we don't have any official purchase or we are just investigating a lot of opportunities, but nothing is official now. And also we want to make sure that any acquisition can be done in conjunction with the upcoming sector plan that just started.
Okay, thank you. And one more we have from Deborah. Do you think we should have parks and open spaces? I am. Oops, sorry, just lost your. Oh, for some reason I lost that comment. But the way our parks and open spaces are protected generally has to do with funding. Our policy is that once we have parkland, we consider it protected. We, in some instances, we conserve it for the natural resources that it represents, allowing trails and those types of things. And in other cases, we develop the land to meet recreational needs, but that's the limit of the development that we provide. And then lastly, we have a comment from Mary Jo. Looking ahead in 30 years, how will parks located in more rural areas fit into this vision? We need to value and preserve our rural spaces as well. So right now, Mary, the vision the general plan update, Thrive 2050 plan, is talking a lot about the agricultural reserve and how that entire area needs to be protected. We do have parkland in those areas currently, and what we plan to do is, for new developments that might happen into the area, also look at increasing the parks and open spaces that might be needed to preserve, certain types of rural spaces. That's, we do that anyway, but the plan really talks a lot about the agricultural reserve and how we want to protect it. So that you might want to join in the community chats that talk about the land use for that area to get some specific comments about that if you would like.
Oh, and that's Christina. I want to just add, because the question had a specific focus on walk and bike paths. So we are developing, within the more urbanizing areas, walking access studies that in the future we can use the same tool for expanding outside of the urbanizing areas. But the planning department is developing a pedestrian master plan. So we are sharing resources. So, the pedestrian network is the same that parks and planning staff are using. And also, the planning department recently approved the bicycle master plan for the entire county. So there are different planning documentation and tools and analysis tools that will be used in the general plan in order to make sure that the 15-minute living, including biking, walking, or driving, could be applicable to the rural areas as well.
So I see that Maren just posted in the chat that if you want to engage in a discussion about the Ag Reserve, that topic will be discussed on June 30th from 7 to 8 p.m. as part of the diverse and adaptable growth discussion.
Yeah, and then thanks, Deborah, for resending your question. She says, do you think we should have permanent protection of parks and open space? I am a volunteer and organize weed warriors and trash cleanups, but it seems to me a lot of parks and open spaces are just placeholders for future construction, especially if they are natural areas without infrastructure or programming. MCPS, schools, state highway, and Department of Transportation all target parkland for their construction projects. My motivation is somewhat mixed. Why should I try to protect and improve parkland open space if it's just going to become a school or highway?
That's a good comment. And this is a good segue into talking about our PROS plan and how the PROS plan relates to the general plan. So the Department of Parks has every 5-year plan that we have to develop for the state to be eligible for PROS, Parks, Recreation, and Open Space funding from the state of Maryland. And one of the things that we include in PROS is something that we call the Policy for Parks. And the Policy for Parks are guidelines for the non-park use of parkland. And what this gets at is anytime another public agency wants to use parkland for their project, they have to go through a progression of minimize, mitigate, compensate, avoid is the first, avoid, first and foremost, we would love for them to develop their project to avoid parkland. And if they can't avoid it, we want them to mitigate for any impacts that they're going to have. And then if don't have enough mitigation that they can achieve to our satisfaction, they will also compensate us for any impacts. I see Jay Cole on the call here. If she wants to talk a little bit more about this topic, I invite her to chime in.
Yeah, and Jay, there's also a comment from Diane following up on that. So Yeah, this is a very interesting topic for our community.
All right, let me read Diane's comment real quick, following up on Deborah's question. Parkland natural areas, woodlands, wetlands, floodplains are vulnerable to development projects, both those initiated by parks itself, e.g. to build recreation facilities and stormwater facilities, and by other entities. Watershed groups and civic groups need to dialogue more fully with parks and planning directors and staff in order to A, understand how you now protect and preserve existing natural areas, and B, how you can work with us and other parties to improve and expand the preservation, legal, managerial, and practical of park open space, especially woodlands and wetlands. So I will say that our Chuck referred to our policy for parks, our most stringent policy that has our avoid, minimize, mitigate, compensate plan to make sure that whatever impact of parkland is approved by the planning board as for the public goods. The first thing I'll say is that any impact of parkland, all people have an opportunity to testify in front of the planning board as to their opinions on that with roads and all else. We take very great lengths to make sure that the project is necessary, that they're not just targeting parkland because it's green and free of infrastructure. We take very great lengths to explain that our forests and our wetlands and our streams are in fact amenities for our communities. The absence of a building does not make it free land to take, and they have to go through what's called a park construction permit process. So I do agree with you that, you know, pushing back on other entities utilizing parkland, but I just want to ensure everybody that parks does not just sort of duck and cover and allow that to be done without a lot of work, fight if necessary, and recommendations for alternative alignments.
Right. By the time it gets to the planning board, a lot of conversation has already taken place between the agency and us on the different aspects of avoid, minimize, mitigate, and compensate. So, you know, a lot of conversation has taken place. The planning board is not only the planning board. So the planning board manages the growth and the land use in the county. That's one hat that they wear. But the other hat that they wear is they are the manager and final decision maker about any changes to parkland in the county. They are also the Parks Commission. So they wear both hats as part of their deliberative process. All right, why don't we move on to the final few slides. So this is the timeline for Thrive Montgomery 2050. The issues report was presented to the planning board back in February. The draft visions and goals were presented to the board in mid-April. The draft policies and actions will be presented to the board this coming Thursday, and the staff report either has been posted in here or is available on the website. And on the next slide, I'll show you how you can be more involved. In September, the working draft plan will be presented to the planning board. There'll be an opportunity for a public hearing and public testimony following the approval of the draft plan. It then becomes the planning board draft of the plan. And then there'll be a lot of deliberation, a lot of conversations with the community and various other stakeholders throughout the late fall and winter. And then in the spring, the plan will be transmitted to the county council, where they will deliberate and make their changes, and then it will be approved and adopted. Next slide. So this is how you can stay involved. Through noon tomorrow, you are welcome to submit written testimony to the chair. That's the first bullet under the first sub-bullet under the main bullet at the top. You can also watch the testimony on the Montgomery County Planning Board website. You can watch the work session. You can sign up for the Thrive Montgomery 2050 e-newsletter that comes out weekly or bi-weekly. You can click there and be part of that. You can send your comments directly to Planning Department staff at Thrive 2050 at McGarveyPlanning.org. And of course, you're welcome to connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and participate in the upcoming community chats. Next slide. And this is the schedule of upcoming chats. Tomorrow, the LGBTQ communities discussion will take place, and also diverse economy. So the LGBTQ is noon to 1:30, and then diverse economy is in the evening, 5 to 6. And then next week, and the week after, there'll be a number of other ones, as you can see here: June 17th, June 22nd, June 23rd, the 24th, the 29th, and the 30th. So lots of opportunities for the community and residents to participate in various topics of discussion. Next slide. That concludes our presentation. These are the park planners who have been involved in the general plan for the last year and a half. So if you have any questions about the general plan, feel free to reach out to any of us. So Rachel and I were co-leads for the general plan, and Hujan Garland, of course, is our supervisor. Dom Quattrochi was our liaison with the Environment and Sustainability Work Group, and Suzanne Paul was our liaison with the Connectedness and Equity conversation. So feel free to reach out to us. And that concludes our presentation. Yes.
Yeah, this is Rachel. We have a number of people asking about these slides and can we send them out? So we can post them in this chat. And secondly, this recording has this whole conversation and the presentation has been recorded. But also, if you want to put your email into the chat, we can send them to you directly. So you have multiple options for getting this presentation. Thanks, Anna.
Hi, everyone, and this is Marin Hill again with Montgomery Planning. I just wanted to say that if you did RSVP for the event, we will send out to all our email contacts who RSVP'd a link with the recorded presentation and with the PowerPoint. You can also, when they say on our website, you can check thrivemontgomery.com for the PowerPoints as well. And if you have any questions, as Rachel said, you can follow up by emailing thrive2050@montgomeryplanning.org. And I can drop some of that information in the chat if you missed anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marin. I think that brings our presentation to a conclusion. Thank you for joining us. I hope you will join us in conversations on other topics and throughout the rest of June. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.